Go get De'Von Achane, John Schneider. I think that it is possible for the Seahawks to make a big-time blockbuster trade. It's clear to me and clear to everyone else that the Miami Dolphins are in a gigantic fire sale right now. We're going to dive into, on today's show, the different ways that the Seahawks are going to be able to get De'Von Achane, but is a trade going to be worth it? Plus, we'll talk about the most recent signing the Seahawks made, because it literally just broke about 20 minutes or so ago before we began filming. Before we dive into any of that, though, I asked on my social media, does this mean an Achane trade is now possible for the Seahawks? Go give me a follow at Will Ortner. You're going to get even more coverage on your favorite team, the Seattle Seahawks, on my social media. So give yourself a second. That's my actual Twitter account there, at Will Ortner. Go find me. Give me a follow. Maybe you'll get a shout out on a future show. If you love the Seattle Seahawks, hit that thumbs up button. This is Seahawks Today. I am your host, Will Ortner. And today we are going to dive into a blockbuster trade that the Seattle Seahawks are going to be able to potentially make now that we know the Miami Dolphins are in a fire sale. How do we know that? Well, because the Miami Dolphins just traded Jalen Waddle, their other big-time star, which I do think was an interesting trade over to the Denver Broncos. The Dolphins do end up getting a first and a third and a fourth-round pick in this draft, while, of course, the Broncos get Waddle. And then they do end up getting the Dolphins' fourth-round pick. What I think is interesting about this trade is that it felt like maybe the Dolphins would at least hold on to a weapon or two for their new quarterback in Malik Willis. Seems pretty clear that they are not going to do that. The Dolphins are completely blowing up their team, and that does mean that there are going to be some available players. One so that I think would fill a clear need in Seattle is that running back position, and of course that would be De'Von Achane. Achane is a younger, faster, more explosive version of K9, and we already know that the Seattle Seahawks are very interested in him because, well, during the trade deadline, we did videos on De'Von Achane potentially going to the Seattle Seahawks. This came to us from Tony Pauline, and it was, of course, that the Seahawks could move Reek Woolen, some other assets to go get Dolphins running back De'Von Achane. Now, it did feel like at the time, thank you to Sleeper for aggregating Tony Pauline's post that he did earlier before, but it is pretty clear that De'Von Achane is someone that the Seahawks have at least a little bit of interest in, and he is someone that the Seahawks would be very interested in trading for. Now, Reek Woolen and a couple of picks that the Dolphins wanted at the time was a little bit too much, but when you look at the stats for a guy like De'Von Achane, it's pretty darn clear that this kid is a very good player right now. You can see he's over 1,300 yards, well over 5 yards a carry, which is an insane amount. But then you do have to remember that his head coach, who also was calling plays, was head coach Mike McDaniel over there. Now that number's probably going to go down because you're having a different offensive mind call those plays, but that also means that Achane would be very successful in Brian Fleury's offense here in Seattle because, well, he would be running essentially the same offense. You can also see here from Achane that he gets better and better every single year, and he also became more of a feature back by the end of his time in Miami, or potentially by the end of his time in Miami. To have over 3,000 yards in just 3 short seasons, I think is a very big number to hit. Plus, Achane is one of the faster running backs, if not the fastest running back in the National Football League. So, what could a potential trade look like? We'll dive into that here in just one moment. We're going to get back to today's video, but first I want to let you know about my friends over at Cheers. At 28 years old, I'm starting to get over the hill, and even 1 or 2 drinks of alcohol responsibly over an evening can really ruin me the next day. That's why I've started to get really obsessed with Cheers. Cheers restores a dual action after alcohol aid. Its ingredients support both your brain and your liver after consuming alcohol. Cheers was originally invented by a student at Princeton based on research into a novel compound called DHM. DHM demonstrated powerful alcohol-related properties in the brain and liver. So Cheers was designed for how alcohol actually affects your body, not just dehydration. Cheers has appeared on Shark Tank, and today Cheers is sold in over 30,000 stores, including Walgreens, CVS, 7-Eleven, and Circle K. They've sold over 50 million doses, 7,500 4- and 5-star reviews on Amazon. This isn't for college binge drinking. If you have 12 tequila shots, you're probably still going to feel rough. But if you're a normal adult responsibly having 2, 3, or 4 drinks, you'll feel significantly better with Cheers. Same night out, way better morning with Cheers. For a limited time, our listeners are getting 20% off their entire order by using chat at cheershealth.com. Just head to cheershealth.com and use code CHAT for 20% off. After your purchase, they will ask you where you heard about them. Please support Seahawks today and tell them our show sent you. The Achane rumors started kind of floating back up again a little bit while ago. Last week, FanDuel, they said that would a team say no to this trade, and they kind of put out this graphic for a trade proposal. Seattle, they would get De'Von Achane, and then the Miami Dolphins would end up getting a second-round pick in the 2026 draft from the Seahawks, their only second-round pick, and they would get a sixth-round pick in the 2027 draft. Now, obviously, the Seahawks do have a ton of capital in that 2027 class, but to me, the way that the Seahawks are talking about that draft and the way also that the Seahawks don't have a ton of draft capital already right now, it does seem like it is a steep price. It's also important to mention that De'Von Achane is in the final year of his contract. So if the Seahawks are going to make a big trade like that, kind of makes a lot of sense for the Seahawks to make sure that they'd get a guarantee that he would re-sign with Seattle, or he'd already have a contract signed before he even came over. Now, it's important to mention with De'Von Achane, D-E-V, capital V-O-N, it is important to note that he is a top-tier player in the National Football League. He's also a player that is not afraid to use his speed to get open. When I look at a guy like De'Von Achane, I know that the price is going to be good, but I also know that the Seahawks are going to have to give up more capital than maybe I might be comfortable with. And this is why, to me, it does feel a bit steep. Now, I am going to ask you down below in the comment section, the Seahawks need to trade for De'Von Achane. That's a comment that I had sent to me. Do you agree or disagree with that sentiment? Let me know down below in today's comment section. I have a couple of reasons why I would trade for De'Von Achane, but it's also important that we look at the totality of what this trade agreement could potentially be. Because if money wasn't an option, yeah, sure, trade away whatever you need. Go get De'Von Achane. Problem is, money is an option. So here's a reason why I would trade for De'Von Achane. There is a clear need for him in Seattle. Achane plays a position that Seattle, while you might feel a little bit comfortable with a couple of the guys that the Seahawks have over there, I don't know that I'm necessarily comfortable with Emmanuel Wilson being a big-time performer for this team early on. I don't know that I'm 100% comfortable with George Halani taking over and having to be that number one guy for a certain amount of time while Zach Charbonnet is still recovering from his ACL injury. I don't know that I am comfortable with McIntosh coming off of an ACL tear being labeled as the for sure, no problem, explosive running back for the Seahawks until I've seen him go out and practice. In my opinion, Seattle needs an explosive running back, and right now in the National Football League, I'd be hard-pressed to find another running back that has that explosive tag that is better than De'Von Achane. You might find more complete backs, but even Kenneth Walker is not nearly as explosive, in my personal opinion, as De'Von Achane. The reason why you might not realize that is because, well, he plays in Miami, so not a lot of people are watching him because they stink. The other big reason why I could potentially trade for a guy by the name of De'Von Achane is because there would be a clear improvement for the Seahawks at that position. Now, even if Seattle had re-signed Kenneth Walker, I still think there is more production from De'Von Achane than there would necessarily be from Kenneth Walker. Now, to be fair to Walker and to be fair to Achane, Walker was not a main back. He split carries. Achane was the one back all by himself. I also think it's fair to note that Achane is younger and showed that while he was the number one back, he could tote the load and stay healthy throughout the year. When I look at Kenneth Walker had his opportunity to be the number one back all by himself for multiple years, and he ended up getting beat up and ended up getting hurt. Now, does that mean that De'Von Achane would be the number one feature back all by himself in Seattle? No, but I do think that early on he would be. And I also think that this shows, in my opinion, De'Von Achane's better than Kenneth Walker. And I know that a lot of Seahawks fans are not going to love to hear that, but I think that it is important to mention. Seattle would be getting a clear upgrade if they traded for De'Von Achane. The question is do you want to give up that capital? I'll let you know about my opinion on that in just one moment. But first, I got to let you know about the sweet merch we got going on over at chatsports.com/Seahawks merch. Of course, you know we got our Seahawks Today t-shirt. You can go get a navy one or a black one. I've got the Mob Mentality t-shirt on right now. It's my favorite to wear. We also have our Champions merch. Letting everybody know it's the Mob Mentality throughout everything that we do. You got second, third, and fourth winter coming up, so make sure that you go and grab one of your hoodies. They're so freaking sweet. And, of course, we've got the sweet mascot edition of the MOB. We are going to have that link down below in the comment section and description of today's video. Make sure that you go and click that right now. It'll take you right where you need to go. You can pick up a t-shirt, and guess what? We'll get you a shout-out on a future show. The problem right now with De'Von Achane and why I don't know that the Seahawks will make this trade, he's going to get north of $10 million next year. Right now, Spot Track actually has his contract value or market value, I would say, at $12 million or a little bit north thereof. Seattle wasn't really willing to go over $10 million for Kenneth Walker. Are they going to be willing to go over $10 million, possibly 11, possibly 12 for De'Von Achane? I don't think that they're going to. I think the Seahawks would rather pay other positions and have put a bigger value on other positions. So in my personal opinion, I don't know that they make this trade strictly from the standpoint of, well, De'Von Achane is going to be very expensive next year. Seattle wasn't willing to pay that money right now for someone who's already in and on this team. De'Von Achane feels like it would be tough to make a trade go, but maybe it would. In my opinion, if the Seahawks were going to make a trade, they would obviously have to sign a contract extension with Achane. And in my opinion, this would be a solid trade for the Seahawks. You end up giving up a second round in this year's draft. Then you end up giving up one of your seventh-round draft picks. Because remember, the Seahawks have 2 seventh-round draft picks in the 2027 year. Seattle would then end up getting De'Von Achane. Is that going to be enough? I don't know. I really don't. I don't know that Miami would be willing to come off that. I ended up talking to our Dolphins Today host, Nick Roloff, and he ended up saying that the Seahawks could get De'Von Achane for just one pick. Problem was it was pick number 32 in this draft. I don't know if Seattle's willing to give up a first rounder for it. When you look at my trade idea, would you make this trade? Let me know down below in the comment section, yes or no. I think it's a good trade. I don't know that the Seahawks are going to be willing to make that trade because, again, in my opinion, that is it's not an easy trade to be made. That is also a spot and definitely a position, too, where the Seahawks are going to have to make sure that they sign De'Von Achane. Very similar to the Rashid Shaheed trade. Next, we're going to finish off this show with the latest signing for the Seattle Seahawks because according to NFL reporter Aaron Wilson, Chazz Surratt is re-signing with the Seattle Seahawks. Also important to note that ESPN beat reporter for the Seahawks, Brady Henderson, backed this up as well. Now, I love this signing for the Seahawks, not because the stats are going to jump off the page for you when you look at Surratt, but he was someone that the Seahawks brought in after training camp, and they asked him to be a backup linebacker and a big special teams performer for this team. When Surratt was healthy, he was able to add in and be a big, important piece to this Seahawks team. But it's also important to note that when you look at Surratt, he has basically been a lifetime special teams player. And what a lot of people don't realize is that you need guys like Surratt. You need guys to come in and do the dirty work on special teams. You need guys that are not afraid to make big plays for this team, but also be in a position where they are preparing every single day to be an integral piece on that special teams unit. It's very clear that the Seahawks, Jay Harbaugh, and the rest of that special teams unit care a lot about Chazz Surratt and care a lot about making sure they have the best special teams unit in the National Football League. The Seattle Seahawks special teams unit literally won them a Super Bowl this year. Not because of the Super Bowl necessarily, but because of the different instances where the special teams had to come up big. Rashid Shaheed had multiple big touchdowns. Shoot, the Seahawks were able to force a punt return fumble against the Rams, get the recovery, and of course that led to the Seahawks winning that game by 1 score in the NFC Championship game. The Seahawks value special teams, and that is exactly where Chazz Surratt shines. I love what the Seahawks are doing here. It's a smart signing, and it's a strong depth piece. Make sure that you follow me on social media at Will Ortner on Twitter and on Instagram. Super easy to find. Not hard to find me because, well, they're both the same. It's just my name, all lowercase. Make sure that you go and follow me there. You're going to get extra coverage, as well as make sure that you hit that sub button. You love the Seattle Seahawks. I love the Seattle Seahawks, and I love covering them for you. Thank you guys so much for viewing today's video, and I can't wait to see you next time.